Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Katie Jeffries here on First Coast News Plus. We have a great interview for you today. We are speaking with Chase Robinson. He is the Executive Director of First Coast CrimeStoppers, a very important organization here in Jacksonville. So Chase, we really appreciate you making the time for us to be here today. First, tell us about your involvement, because you are fairly new to that position at CrimeStoppers.
So I've been Executive Director for about a year now, but I was the office manager for about 2 years before that. And our former executive director, Wiley Hodges, former undersheriff over at JSO, I learned a lot under him about what it means to be a Crime Stopper organization, but also what it looks like going forward. So while I may be new to the position, the morals and the values that we have as an organization are instilled deep within me, and something that I look forward to carrying the torch forward with.
Tell me about Crime Stoppers, the organization. We obviously, a lot of people know it's the number we say on the news all the time after a story. If you know something, call Crime Stoppers. But tell us a little bit more about Crime Stoppers, maybe something we don't necessarily know about the organization.
Of course, and I think a good place to start would be there's sometimes this misconception on what Crime Stoppers is, that we might be an extension of JSO or a law enforcement agency. And while we do have very important partnerships with the 18 different agencies that we cover in the 6 counties in the First Coast, we are a separate registered 501c3 nonprofit organization. And I think that is vital for the public to understand, because the information that you provide to First Coast Crime Stoppers is protected. And not only is it protected by organization, it's protected by Florida statutes. And if you were to go in the Florida statutes and look at 16.555, 56, and 57, you can actually see how the conversations that you have with Crime Stoppers is protected, the information that you provide Crime Stoppers is protected, and if that information was to ever be leaked out or given away, it's punishable by a third-degree felony. So the information is literally anonymous, and it's not a catch to get you to call a number and give information. We are an advocate for the public and an advocate to bring justice to families.
And we're going to get to how it works in just a second. But first, I want to talk about the reward money. Where do you all get the reward money? And tell us about, I guess, the different levels kind of the reward money.
Of course. So I guess it really needs to start with where we get our funding in general. And that is a Crime Stopper Trust Fund. It's a separate Florida statute, but it is a Florida statute that mandates the courts to add a $20 Crime Stopper fee when someone is arrested on the list of court fines that they have to pay, and that goes into a trust fund, and that trust fund is then divvied out based off judicial circuit to all the different Crime Stopper organizations throughout the state of Florida. So that is where we get our operating expenses, our advertising expenses, but most importantly, that is where we're paying our rewards from. So essentially, it is criminals paying to arrest criminals is really the basis of Crime Stoppers. And that $20 fee, now while that doesn't seem a whole lot when you add up sort of an aggregate of all those court fines, that's how we're able to pay rewards. And we pay up to $3,000 for any crime under the sun, essentially. Now, the severity of the crime or the amount of narcotics seized, properties seized, that really determines what the value of the reward is going to be, and that's something that every month our board of directors sits down and determines. Now, while the $3,000 cash rewards and even the enhanced rewards up to $25,000, that gets the most publicity. That's what you see on the news all the time, reading articles. But I would say our average tip that we're paying out every month is about $300. And I think, people might not think that $300 is a lot, but, to someone that can mean everything, and that could really help them get on their feet, or it can be a way for individuals to feel that they have an impact in the community.
Let's talk about how it all works, because I think one of the questions people have is, well, how do I give a tip, get the money, but remain anonymous, all within the same thing, that you don't have to give your name? Like, how does it work? I know that it goes to a call bank out of state, correct?
That is correct. So if you call the 1-866-845-TIPS, it goes to our call center, which is actually in an undisclosed location in Southeast Texas, and they are a Crime Stoppers trained call center. All they do is answer calls that are coming into Crime Stopper agencies around the country. So they're trained on how to collect your information, what questions not to ask. They never record your personal information. Even if you accidentally tell them, they're not going to record it. And if you were to go on our website or our mobile app and submit it digitally, that is also going to what we call our P3 system. And that system itself collects all the information, whether it's from the call center, whether it's from the website, and that's how we can go in and see the tip information. And we actually take it a step further, and what we do is we call it sanitization. And we actually protect tipsters from themselves. And the analogy that I like to use is if you, in your tip, for example, say, well, my neighbor is selling these drugs. Well, you just indirectly identified yourself as the neighbor of the individual in question. So we'll go in there and change it and just say an individual at this location is doing whatever the tip is saying. So we protect tipsters from themselves. All the information that they're giving us, like I mentioned with the Florida statutes, is protected, but it's also stored in a cloud-based server. So there's no need for people to worry about information being leaked out. It's protected. And one of the questions we actually get asked quite often is, well, how am I going to pick up a cash reward
without my name?
Without my name, without someone seeing me, without a driver's license? How are they going to write a check to me? Well, it's pretty neat, and it kind of feels like you're robbing a bank, to be honest. So when you call into our office or you message us on our website and you give us your tip number and you're checking on the status of your tip, we will give you a reward pickup code if it's led to an arrest. And our tips coordinator will tell you, hey, you've been approved for a $600 reward. Here's how we're going to do it. So we partner with Truist here in the First Coast area, and you will just simply drive up, ride your bike, walk up if you don't have those means, and you simply put a slip with the reward code written on it into the tube. And because we partner with Truist, the bank tellers are actually trained in paying out Crime Stopper rewards. So we've already sent over the information, the number, how much they're going to get paid. So when that note goes back to the bank teller, they simply put cash in an envelope, send it back down the tube, and you walk off. There's no face-to-face interaction, no names, no driver's license. It's truly anonymous from the beginning all the way to when you pick up your reward.
That's really incredible. So they give you a number, and then you can find out if that gets a tip or not. Take it to the bank, like you said, just give them a slip of paper through the little chute, and then cash comes back and you go on your way.
Exactly, completely anonymous. And that sometimes is lost, or people have questions about that, of how that works. So trying to really uncover, the stigma behind it, that there's not a guy waiting on the other side of the bank teller to kind of try to find your personal information. It's truly protected, and something that we take seriously, that Florida statutes ensure, that we really want the public to understand that we are here for the community and we are here to protect you from ever having a fear of retaliation.
That's because trust, I feel like, with this is probably so critical. If there was even one breach of trust, then of course everything would fall apart. So you guys are so careful to make sure that doesn't happen.
We are, and we've been in the First Coast since 2002, and over the course of that time, we've never compromised the identity of a tipster. And that's something that we're proud of and something that we want to continue to carry forward. So with all the steps that I mentioned, all the technology that we use, we really take it seriously. And I want to reiterate again that we are not a law enforcement agency. We are the mediator between the public and law enforcement. So we are trying to increase that trust in law enforcement to really see something and say something. And we are the outlet that you can do that. Get that information to law enforcement. Never have to worry about someone in the community figuring out what you said, who you're talking about, that you can do it safely, and it truly is safe.
Talk to me about the different ways people can send tips in, because I know sometimes people may see something on social media or they have a video of something, but they're afraid to turn it over. So how can they send in those maybe pieces of media to you guys, but also still remain anonymous? How do they do that?
Of course. So like you mentioned earlier, the 1-866-845-TIPS, that's mentioned in news stories, it's mentioned on the bottom of articles. That's been our old reliable, if you will. It's the standard way that you can call in the information. Now, that is going to be just verbal information, and that's the same with star tips. So if you want to take that a step further, if you have pictures, videos, audio files, screenshots, you can go to our website and click on Submit a Tip there, or you can download the P3 Tips app. And not only does that let you type in the information that you would have said to someone at our call center, but you can also attach all those files I just mentioned. So if you know, say, John Doe is the person committing this act, you can submit their social media handles, screenshots of what they look like. So it can really help law enforcement kind of get a leg up on their investigation, and they can kind of have that extra step to increase your chances of collecting a cash reward.
That's really incredible. So let's also talk about some of the open cases that you all have right now. We've got 3 that we've kind of set aside to talk about today. The first, Breon Allen, a 7-year-old that was killed in January. This case has gotten a lot of attention in Jacksonville, of course, because of the young man's age. There's also, I believe, a $25,000 reward. But can you kind of walk us through your involvement in this case?
Of course, and I think it kind of starts with the enhanced reward, right? So we offer cash rewards up to $3,000, and anything above that comes from an outside source. So I think when this first happened, I mean, within hours of it happening, we were getting phone calls from community members wanting to give money towards increasing the reward. So I think it speaks to the impact that this has had on the community. And our role really has been, collecting that money, putting it into a pot. Now that's up to $25,000. Originally it was 18, now it's up to 25. And allowing a way for people to get information about Breonna Allen's death to us anonymously. And we have received about 20 tips since Breonna's murder, and especially since we went from that 18,000 to that 25,000. And I really just want the public to know that everything that I've said, you are truly anonymous, and this 7-year-old didn't deserve what happened, and the way that it happened is unfortunate. But the one thing we can do is we can bring justice to this family. And you can do that by calling First Coast Crime Stoppers or going to our website or mobile app.
And like you said, one of these tips obviously could solve this case, which would be huge, but also that person could walk away with $25,000 in hand without even having to talk to anybody.
Exactly. Completely anonymous, no driver's license, no names. And one thing we're actually seeing with the tips coming in on this case is an increase in what we talked about earlier, attachment of photos, videos, audio files, that people are taking that next step to provide as much information as they possibly can. Now, we are getting tips and they are going over to JSO's homicide, but we just encourage the public to keep talking about it, because you never know. That one small piece of information that you might think, police already knows, or that someone's already talked about it, just go ahead and say it. The worst thing that happens is that, it doesn't lead to anything. Best case scenario, it brings justice to a family.
Another case, one that we're going to be featuring on Unsolved this Friday, but we've talked about it. You helped kind of connect us to get this moving along. But Melinda Holder, Melinda Holder out of the Green Cove Springs area. First of all, we're going to talk about the case, but also how far out do you guys stretch? Because I think sometimes people think First Coast Crime Stoppers is only Jacksonville, but you guys are much bigger than just Jacksonville.
We are. So we cover 6 counties in Northeast Florida. So it's Nassau, Duval, Clay, Baker, Bradford, and Union counties. So while Jacksonville is kind of the hub of the 6 counties that we cover, anything that happens, any crime-related incidents within those 6 counties, we offer a cash reward up to $3,000. And, just in my travels going around to the different police departments, I came across, Detective Milliken, who was assigned to this case and really wanted to reignite the passion to try to solve this case. And I mean, when the Netflix documentary, it's what it really sounds like it needs, just the way that it spans out. It's really a testament to what the family has gone through. I think it's a unique case, and being in the small town of Green Cove Springs, it didn't necessarily get the attention that it deserved. So that's why we're trying to reignite this case and try to, hopefully get some tips in and bring justice to the family.
And especially in a small town, people can probably be a little nervous about speaking up because so many people know each other. As we were talking to Detective Milliken, people have lived there for generations, but if they call in information in this case, obviously it remains anonymous.
Exactly, and that's something that I've learned about the Green Cove Springs area, that everyone knows everyone, right? And everyone knows what everyone says. It's your typical small town. But I really want to reiterate that all the steps we've been talking about, that if the information that you feel is necessary to give to law enforcement, you can do so safely through Crime Stoppers. And all the steps that we take ensure that no one in your neighborhood, your neighbors, friends, family will not know what you said or who you're talking about. You are the determining factor in that. Our organization will protect you from beginning to end as mandated in Florida statute. So if you know anything, we really encourage you to give that information to us, to make a phone call, visit our website. It's really easy, and you could change a family's life and bring closure to a case that's going on 35 years.
So we're going to have more on that case this Friday at 11 p.m., the Melinda Holder case on Unsolved. Now, this past Friday on Unsolved, we featured Gabriel DeVoe's story. Also, just a really tragic story. He was 1 semester out from graduation when he was killed in 2022, I believe, in an Arlington apartment complex parking lot. This one has just been so challenging for detectives because they say that there are witnesses, but people just won't talk. And Crime Stoppers, of course, would be critical to that information.
Exactly, and from what we understand, there were witnesses to his murder. I mean, it happened in an open parking lot at an apartment complex. So people saw what happened, and people know what happened. And if there's a fear of retaliation that someone's going to find out what you said, or someone might hurt you for saying what you know, that those need to be dismissed. That our organization, safety and security, is number one. And that's something that we take very seriously. And like I've mentioned, we haven't compromised the identity of a tipster in over 23 years.
Talk to me about how you guys want to expand in the future. Because like you said, you're at 6 counties. Obviously, you're getting tips in. How do you guys want to continue to grow Crime Stoppers?
So my goal for our organization going into the future is embracing the future. And one way is realizing the importance of the digital space and how, I believe according, it was to the 2020 census, that 89% of our First Coast residents have access to broadband internet, and about 91% have access to a smart device. So our targets going forward are going to be getting on the phones of everyone in every area of the 6 counties that we cover. And by doing this, just having that First Coast Crime Stoppers logo, our message, the safety, security, anonymity, having that in people's faces as much as we possibly can, that when something like this happens in your community, because you never know when it's going to happen, no community is exempt from a heinous act, and giving them the tools to be able to call Crime Stoppers and to be able to get that information to law enforcement safely.
Do you guys have any big initiatives, big projects, big fundraisers coming up down the line?
So we have 2 annual fundraisers that we do every single year. Coming up in April, on April 10th, we're having a sporting clay shoot. So if there's any sporting clay shooters out there, it's a wonderful
That's pretty
event.
Cool.
And then we're also going to be hosting our 21st annual golf tournament in October. And we encourage people to come out, and if you're like me, all my balls go in the woods, but it's still a fun time.
It's for charity, so it's all
charity.
Good.
Exactly. That's all that matters. But outside of the fundraising events, we're working on redesigning our website as well. We really want to feature high-profile cases like Gabriel DeVoe or Breonna Allen, which you will find on our home screen, to be able to have their faces and to really humanize these cases, that, that's not just black and white news articles, that these are people, these are lives, that they matter, and that the words that you give to Crime Stoppers matter.
Well, as we are starting to wrap things up here, if there was one thing you could say to somebody out there who's on the fence about coming forward with information out of fear or whatever it is, what is the one thing you would want to say to that person?
That the information that you are providing to Crime Stoppers and the conversation that you have, whether it's with the call center, whether it's via our mobile app, our website, whatever it is legally protected by Florida statutes. That information cannot be subpoenaed in a court of law. You cannot be identified or linked to the information that you are giving Crime Stoppers, that you truly are anonymous, that it's not a gimmick. It is something that the state of Florida actually put into the legislature to ensure that you have a way to anonymously report crime. And if that leads to an arrest, a cash reward in your pocket. And like we mentioned, even that process itself is completely anonymous. No names, no faces, and no hassles.
Perfect. Well, Chase Robinson, Executive Director of First Coast Crime Stoppers, we really appreciate your time and being here with us today.
Oh, thank you. I loved it.